So Wab Kinew just did something a lot of Canadian leaders seem way too chicken to do. He looked straight at Danielle Smith's separatist word salad and said, "No, that's not correct."
And honestly, thank God someone finally said it that plainly. Because this whole Alberta referendum stunt has been wrapped in so much political fog that people are starting to forget what is actually happening here.
Yeah, Danielle Smith is not standing up for Alberta. That's for sure. She is standing beside a small separatist minority, giving them oxygen, giving them legitimacy, and then pretending that, oh, she's just innocently asking questions. And here's what makes it even more absurd, Deb. The separatist movement that Smith is propping up, the Republican Party of Alberta, ran candidates in the last election. And you know how many seats they won? Zero. Zero, people. The province did not vote for this. Nobody did, and yet here is Danielle Smith doing their work for them anyway.
At the Western Premiers Conference, she was asked directly about separatism, treaty rights, and the duty to consult Indigenous peoples. All of it was on the table. So what does the Alberta Premier say?
Well, she said she needed clarity.
Clarity? What the hell, Danielle? You know what that really means? It means she doesn't like the answer that already exists. And the answers are clear. The courts have ruled, and she just refuses to live with it.
She also suggested the courts might need to decide whether the duty to consult Indigenous peoples applies to citizen petition gatherers. Not the government, petition gatherers. Are you kidding me? Come on. She's just grasping at straws here, and we all see it.
But thank God Kinew cut right through it. He said the duty to consult rests with the Alberta government, not a fringe group, not an app, not a private petition. The government. And that means you, Danielle.
Yeah, he destroyed her in one sentence. It was beautiful. No beating around the bush with pleasantries here. Just, no, Premier Smith, what you said is not correct.
Listen, an Alberta judge already struck the referendum petition down. Why? Because the Indigenous consultation requirements were not met. The court ruled the whole process invalid.
And of course, Smith's response? Well, she's appealing that ruling. And she's now floating using the Notwithstanding clause, you know, the most powerful legal override a government has, to push it through anyway. For a separatist movement that her own province never even voted for. Who the hell does she even think she is?
Well, I guess we shouldn't be surprised because this isn't the first time that Smith has used Alberta's constitutional powers as a political pressure valve. In 2022, she passed the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. Courts immediately started pushing back. Legal scholars called it unconstitutional on arrival.
And what happened? Well, Ottawa challenged it. Indigenous nations challenged it. Nothing Smith wanted actually went through. The act produced legal chaos and zero wins. Another waste of time and money. And she's good at that.
But it did produce something else, Dave. 3 more years of separatist energy in her base. That's the actual product. It's political oxygen for people who want to blow up Confederation and the country of Canada.
And now it looks like we're in round 2, right? Same performance, just a bigger stage. The Sovereignty Act didn't work, so now it's a referendum. And if the courts block the referendum, she's threatening the Notwithstanding clause.
You see the pattern here, right? When Smith runs into a legal wall, she doesn't change courses. She reaches for a bigger hammer and tells her base the wall is the enemy.
And every round of this costs Alberta in legal fees and investor confidence, in the time and energy that should be going toward actual provincial problems.
Yeah, Alberta has a housing crisis. It has healthcare staffing problems, a diversification challenge as oil prices fluctuate. These are real things. And Smith is spending her political capital on a referendum that the courts keep striking down and that the majority of her own province has never asked for.
So let's put some numbers on what she's actually doing here. Support for Alberta separation runs just shy of 1/3 of Albertans, which blows my mind anyway. It's not a majority, and it's never been a majority, just a third.
And that 1/3 happens to be her base. So the math isn't complicated. She can't afford to lose them. She's putting her own political survival ahead of the majority of the people she was elected to represent, rather than tell a minority faction the truth, that they don't have the legal or democratic authority to break up this country. She keeps feeding the fire for her own political career.
There's also a serious question hanging over the actual petition signatures. The RCMP is investigating a leaked voter list that ended up in the hands of the separatist group. Names, addresses, voter IDs, private information from Elections Alberta that was never ever supposed to be anywhere near a private petition campaign.
Now that's a big deal, and it's not one to be taken lightly. That is a potential criminal breach of election law. If that list was used to pre-populate or verify signatures, then the entire 300,000+ number is compromised.
But Smith is still out there citing that number as if, oh, this is all settled. She's building political cover out of a figure that is actively under a criminal investigation, and nobody in her caucus is saying stop. They're not saying anything. Mark Carney called this a potentially dangerous bluff, and he's not being dramatic here. He watched Brexit happen from the inside.
Brexit was sold the same way. Vote leave just to get a better deal. Politicians said it would be leverage, a negotiating tool. Well, we all know how that worked out, and 10 years later, Britain is still unwinding the damage.
Carney's warning to Alberta is direct. Referendums don't always end arguments. Sometimes they hand a fringe movement a passport and a decade of oxygen.
And here's a poll that sent a chill up my spine, Dave. 7 in 10 Albertans believe separatists would refuse to accept a no vote if they lost. Sounding familiar, isn't it? And 41% of the people actively pushing for separation have already said they won't respect the result. That sounds like Trump. So what is this referendum actually settling?
Absolutely nothing. Once you put national breakup on the ballot, it has its own momentum. It scares investors. It freezes government decisions. It divides communities. And it does not stay neat and tidy just because a premier calls it symbolic. Which brings us to the question Canadians outside Alberta are absolutely entitled to ask. Why does only Alberta get a say in whether Canada is broken apart?
Exactly. Because this is not just Alberta's country to dismantle. This is Canada. It belongs to every province, every territory, every First Nation, every treaty partner, and every Canadian whose future would be affected by this chaos.
Alberta can vote on Alberta's political direction. Fine. But Alberta does not get to pretend that the rest of the country is just standing outside the room waiting for its instructions.
If you're talking about breaking up Canada, then Canadians have a stake in it too. All of us. And that's why Smith's position is so reckless. She keeps acting as if this is a pressure tactic against Ottawa, but the pressure lands on everyone in the country.
So when Carney calls it a dangerous bluff, he's not being dramatic. He's pointing to the oldest mistake in the referendum handbook. Politicians think that they can just use chaos as leverage, and then they act shocked when the chaos starts making its own decisions.
And that's the risk here. A referendum campaign doesn't say neat and tidy because a premier says it's only symbolic. Once you put national breakup on the ballot, you've invited chaos into the room already, and you can't ask it to behave.
Yeah, think about it. Alberta's energy sector depends on federal pipeline approvals, international trade agreements, and cross-border capital that flows in from pension funds, including the very funds that Carney helped build. So the moment separation becomes a live question, that capital starts asking, maybe Alberta is not a stable place to put my money.
So Smith framing this as a technical dispute about consultation procedures is not a legal argument. It's just a dodge. She wants the political upside of a referendum without taking legal responsibility for what it would actually require. And that is a direct insult to everyone involved.
And Kinew's one-sentence answer exposed exactly that gap. And you could see the impact it had clearly. You could hear a pin drop in that room. Finally, a politician saying the truth instead of tap dancing around niceties. It was a breath of fresh air, in my opinion.
It certainly was. And David Eby, the Premier of BC, was right to raise the alarm on national unity as well. Because here's the reality. Canada needs every possible advantage in the CUSMA review this summer. You cannot demand national leverage at the negotiating table while one of your own premiers is simultaneously threatening to blow up the table. And here's a simple truth. Canada cannot be broken up unilaterally. The Supreme Court settled this after the Quebec referendum era. Federal Parliament has a constitutional role. The Clarity Act exists. Treaty rights are not up for renegotiation because separatists find them inconvenient, everyone.
Smith says, I personally support Canada, which is fine. But you can't support Canada while appealing the court ruling that killed this petition. You cannot support Canada while threatening to invoke the Notwithstanding clause for a separatist movement. And you certainly can't support Canada while citing petition numbers that are under RCMP investigation. What people have to realize is that every week this circus continues is a week that Canada's negotiating position on trade, on CUSMA, on critical minerals, it gets a little bit weaker. Because our trading partners are watching this too. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. And division is not a hand you want to be holding at the table right now.
So we say, be a Wab Kinew, everyone, not a Danielle Smith.
So here's our question for you today. Do you think that Wab Kinew's direct challenge will push other premiers to finally say out loud what most of them are way too chicken to say?
Or is Smith going to keep running this referendum circus until Ottawa is forced to step in?
We want to hear what you have to say because this is really important for Canadian sovereignty, not just for Alberta. And your opinion counts.
And if this video hit for you, make sure to hype it, share it, like it, and subscribe if you're not already part of the team.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.